观众朋友们好，欢迎大家来到今天的思想先驱报的现场。最近呢，有一则消息引起了很多网友的注意啊，就是这个马云带着新头型出现在中国大陆的某地。有人说马云要卷土重来了。现在马云是不是要卷土重来我们不知道，但是阿里的确是迎来了一轮估值的重估。现在阿里股价已经从之前的低点反弹超过40%，而过去的一周在恒生指数整体涨幅5%的情况下，阿里在港股的股价是飞涨13%。到底是怎样的一番背景呢？那么现在我们主要关注到的在消息面就是苹果确认会在这个 iPhone 手机中对于阿里 AI 以及云计算的融入。当然更关注的是什么呢？就是中国的科技股现在已经被整个这一轮行情带动。很快在2月20号，阿里有关于云计算的投入的这个资本支出的相关的财报数据也会出现。那么觉得2月20日可能是接下来判断阿里股价走向的，以及更广泛而言中国整个科技股走向的一个重要的节点。所以这里呢，我们也提前为大家踩下这一个日期，2月20日我们再看到底财报中有没有关于AI 基础设施和云计算投入的相关消息。那么这一轮阿里股价到底有没有长期增长的潜力呢？近期我们特别关注到的是，不管高盛也好还是大摩也好，都对于阿里的股价给出了相当较好的长期评估。甚至有人说这个 DeepSeek 就是阿里的 IPO 时刻。为什么这么说呢？首先我们从基本面来看这个阿里现在的 PE 是多少呢？还是10倍左右那么几乎还是一个电商这样的一个估值。那么云计算和 AI 这一部分的增长潜力几乎还没有被包含在估价以内。所以我们说从这个长期以及业务的配置来看那么整个的这个阿里仍然是处在一个比较便宜低位的状态。而美股的科技板块基本都是20-30倍的 PE， 所以特别是和我们叫做国际的对等的这样的一个企业相比估值上还是非常便宜的。另外对于整体的这个中概股来看呢，估值还是相对来讲现在是处于比较低端。那么主要是由于地缘政治的不确定性等等等等特别是之前经历过监管打压的科技公司，股价长期承压，其实现在还是处在没有缓过劲儿来这样的一个状态那么还有一点可能我们更值得注意的就是这一轮 AI， 特别是由 DeepSeek 所带来的我们叫做 AI 民主化大幅降低了 AI 成本部署，可能会对于整个市场认知，对于整个中国科技板块的一个重估。其实不仅仅是 DeepSeek 的开源模型，我们看到阿里的这个千问2.5 Max 模型等等等等，可以说在整个全球的我们叫做大语言模型的或者我们叫做一般而言就是 Chatbot 这一边的测试中，性能都是冲在了全球的前列。一方面呢是冲击了 OpenAI 这样的闭源模式，推动了 AI 技术的民主化。另外我们也看到未来很明显就是投资者要抛弃之前的投资路线，之前是谁敢砸钱谁能扩容那么市场呢一路顶着 AI 的旋风就是砸钱，拼命砸钱。但是 DeepSeek 之后现在大家更关注你商业化到底有没有路线所以在未来的一段时间内呢，可能中国最擅长的第一，大规模部署包括在消费端在企业软件端等等等等这一方面会出现爆喷式的增长因为成本一下子降下来了。另外就是更具有实用功能的AI 加的这一些产品，比如说工业机器人等等等等，包括数据基础设施的，在中国国家政策支持的这样一个情况下，可能会出现强势的回升。因此现在我们看到，如果说之前这一轮从0到1的 AI 的技术的突破是美股 一路领先啊。那我们知道美国的这个七雄啊，可以说是带涨了一大轮的股票的行情。那么接下来在从1到100 AI 民主化这个过程中呢，很有可能中国的企业会抢占先机，而中国的科技资产也会让资本市场重新的审视。那么不管是摩根士丹利也好啊，高盛也好啊，还是美银也好啊，在最新的报告中都对于中国 AI 的投资观点进行了调整可能认为这一轮DeepSeek 用他们的话说，类似于2014年卷土重来，阿里 IPO 带动了中概股的中长期的价值的重新提升。那么现在我们也看市场信心的确是出现了比较明显的修复在这个春节之后 A 股也好，港股也好，科技板块都在向上的带动。当我们说短期1天之内股市增跌等等等等，都是一个正常化的一个现象，但是长期的这个叙事现在比较明显是出现了根本上的转折点。这个呢是根本的大背景。当然了，近期这个阿里云成为苹果在中国市场的这个 AI 合作伙伴，相当于什么呢？就是阿里的这个千问模型一下子这个 iOS 的用户市场在中国有多少呢？超过2亿，将近3亿一下子这个市场可以说是大门大开。另外还有一个明显的我们叫象征对标的一个意涵苹果在海外的合作方是谁呢？是 OpenAI。 所以大家脑子里面一联想，原来阿里就像 OpenAI 之于世界一样，在整个中国市场的这个地位那么有这样的一个意涵。那么接下来我们具体看什么呢？除了我们说短期的这个财报看一看有没有云计算方面的清晰的投资和战略。另外我们可能看到的是既然这个阿里现在在云计算方面似乎呢是面临着一个大门开场的这样的一个市场，那么国内的云计算厂商到底会做出哪一部分的行动？ AI 模型加速落地了，那企业是不是上云的需求也会大了？ AI 投资到商业化这个周期到底对于云厂商的利润率有怎样的影响？这里我们还记得在2025年北美的云厂商4大巨头分别是谷歌、微软、亚马逊还有这个 Meta 就是之前的脸书，在 AI 方面的相关的资本支出呢超过了3000亿美元，可以说是直接带动了 AI 需求的爆发那么这一轮阿里是不是也可以就像当年的这个北美4大云计算商一样也带动中国的这一轮云战略 AI 加的重新估值？我们也特别关注到的就是现在正在巴黎举行的这个 AI 峰会特别是这个蔡崇信在这一次AI 相关带动行情之后有一次演讲，其中讲到的是商业化的周期以及接下来整体的 AI 应用部署，包括投资者的逻辑可能会从之前的只要是 AI 就投这样的一个我们叫做这个比较狂热这样一个状态向更理性的状态转变，谁能够更快的回本，谁的商业化落地能够在市场上打开场面，这可能是十分重要的我们值得关注的一点。那么今天在节目之后我们也特别请我们的这个导播朋友将蔡崇信的相关的演讲视频为大家完整呈现，同时也要请教一下和平先生，这一轮中国科技股资产重估到底有多长远？阿里谈了之后还能反弹多久？卷土重来的到底是马云，是阿里，还是中国的科技资产，还是整个市场对于中国的整体信心的修复？
谢谢李奇博士这么清晰的报道了分析了中国的科技产业在股市上，在投资上好像在迅速回升的这样一种状况。但是事实上，中国的科技的产业和中国制造业的调整，或者是产业结构的调整，以及对中国的经济的评估，对中国这个科技创新的评估是连在一起的一个问题。其实它是一个整体上的一个生态上的变化和调整不要说中国的科技的公司从市值来讲股份的贬低，无论你是在中国还是在这个华尔街你都是 被这个投资界大大的低估的这样一种状况。主要的原因是呢，大家对中国的制造业的这样一种调整、一种升级、产业结构经济结构的一些调整缺乏比较的正面的或者是比较专业的这种认识，被很多谣言，被很多一些产业调整出来的一些困惑所迷惑也被一些自己的企业去淘汰的状况的这样一种企业家的哀嚎一种悲伤连在一起。当然也包括中国的一些迎合民众，或者是呢，这个部分的受西方的经济学的，或者是一些简单的一些概念的这个引导那么从来呢形成了，更不用说西方媒体对中国的很多的报道包括西方的一些智库对中国的很多的报道的评估的促使从来对中国的整体上的经济过分的这个悲观唱衰成为最近几年的主调不仅是西方是这样在中国的企业家、中国的经济学家也普遍是这样一种这个说法甚至很多的老百姓也感觉到中国的前途将会很灰暗，这种判断其实是一个根本上的错误。首先中国的制造业的这种调整，产业结构的调整是一种主动的行为，而不是像亚洲金融危机，也不是像日本的石油之前的这种泡沫的破灭，也不是美国的次贷危机中国是一个主动性的一种调整主动的掌握的这个机会大大就增加了。第二个是中国基于是世界上最优良的最有力量的这种制造业，那么制造业本身它就是科技创新的之母就是真正这个在不断的这个创新中间，往往是在流水线上。这一点我们在过去几年中间不断的跟大家强调。那么这样一种这个创新，实际上它来的更加具有实用性，更加具有突破性它跟基础科学实验室的研究还是很大的不同实验室的研究可能更具有这个长远性的这个影响，但是在这个科技产业上面流水线上的这种创新呢，它就会迅速的变成产品，进行这个市场化为这个消费者所用那么我的一个观点就是呢，基于有这个制造业那就是为了随之而来的就是科学创新科技创新。中国不是没有科技创新能力，而是科技的创新能力长期或者是至少这些年被很多人忽视了。中国未来在科技创新方面不仅是一个主导者，而且很有可能是一个领先者这是产业所决定的一个必然的这个现象。在这种情况之下中国的很多的高科技公司有可能会迎接一场这个估值的增加，也可能会带动新的一些这个投资的热潮。当然这就要看了西方投资界他们能不能转过弯来包括港台香港或者亚洲的一些投资界，你别看他们离中国很近那么好像很了解情况，其实很多的投资界这些年被流言蜚语被这些唱衰的声音破坏了他们正常的这个判断力。那这次会不会带来一个调整的这个机会呢我们还要继续的观察。不过李奇博士已经给我们带来了一些变化的这种信息谢谢大家，欢迎给我们的节目点赞这个转发，介绍给你们的朋友，谢谢，再见。
Thank you and good morning to everybody. And just one shout out before we get started. On behalf of, I think, all of us, certainly Joe and myself, we want to thank World Government Summit Omar, the incredible organization. This is now almost 10 years, and this has become one of the most important, effective, efficient, valuable gatherings anywhere in the world. And their hospitality is just second to none. And so I think we should, a big round of applause and thank you for all of that. So, Joe, excited to have this conversation with you. I want to start. In 1999, you were making $700,000 a year in a job, and you were offered to join the startup Alibaba, where you were actually going to be paid $600 a year. You did this after a mutual friend of yours introduced you to Jack Ma, who your friend said to you was very smart and kind of crazy. And so my question for you is, why did you pick kind of crazy?
Well, thanks, Jeffrey. Before I get to your question, I want to say I'm actually very honored to be interviewed by you on this stage like this here. You've been a mentor to me, and the one thing that you taught me is how to treat people, treat all walks of life, no matter who they are, treat them with respect. And I've learned a lot from you, so thank you very much. I'm very honored to be here. So the question about kind of crazy, what kind of crazy am I talking about? This was in 1999 when I showed up in this second-story apartment in Hangzhou to visit with Jack. I had read a little bit about him. In fact, in The Economist, I mean, this is before anybody got famous, but the editor of The Economist, Chris Anderson, identified Jack as the Jeff Bezos of China. And we're like, who is... very few people knew Jeff Bezos back then, and much less the person in China. And I went to his apartment. Before I went into the apartment, there were like 10, 12 pairs of shoes. In front of it, you took off your shoes before you step into people's homes. So I said, well, maybe there are some 10, 12 people working in this apartment. I went in, obviously Jack being the charismatic individual that he is, and I was just mesmerized by him for about an hour. Then I had to go to the bathroom. So I said, Jack, excuse me, let me use the restroom. He said, it's right over there. I went in and I saw that there are something like 12 toothbrushes on the sink. And I realized these people were just living there 24/7. They were in sleeping bags, working away. And something dawned on me that this was the garage equivalent, the HP garage of China. And the thing that really struck me wasn't really the crazy part. I mean, Jack was talking about a big vision that I didn't really quite understand. He said, to do a startup, you don't really have a business plan. You just kind of go along. And those are all the crazy aspects, but that wasn't the reason that I decided to quit. To quit my current the job at the time to join Alibaba. It was really the idea that he was a leader. He was leading these disciples who really truly had to believe. He gave them the mission about what technology was going to do, in particular internet technology, what it was going to do to not just the company, but also the whole country.
At that time, did he have a real vision for what this was going to be?
The vision at the time was to create an internet platform so all the small companies, manufacturers, and trading companies from China doing exports can list themselves on this platform. In fact, we call it the BBS, the Bulletin Board System. And that was the first website of Alibaba.com. It was in English language, in fact. And that's because it was made for non-Chinese people that are sourcing from China to use and buy stuff from China. And we were at the cusp of China entering the WTO. So once that happened, Chinese exporters, the export-driven economy came to life, and that was sort of that propelled the early success of Alibaba.
So, but talk about it as a pivot. So you're a lawyer, you're a private equity investor. To give all that up, to walk away and go into a tech startup is just a huge leap. So why did you think you could do it, and what gave you the courage to do it?
I've always been a curious person and someone who's not satisfied with where I am. I always wonder what happens at the other side, on the other side of the fence. So as a lawyer, I was doing advisory work. Lawyers rarely control the decision. They give advice to clients, and then the clients make their decisions. So I decided that I wanted to go from being an advisor to someone who is a decision-making role, and I joined a private equity firm. When you're investing, you are committing capital, you have to underwrite the investment thesis, and you're making decisions. But then I realized as an investor, I was sitting on boards of companies, but you're really not involved in the actual business itself. You simply allocated capital to entrepreneurs and management teams for them to do the business. So I became curious, well, what's on the other side? I wanted to be in an operating company, and the confluence of factors at the time was the rise of the internet. I think companies like Yahoo, eBay had come before Alibaba 2 or 3 years prior to that. That felt really exciting. So for me, it was an opportunity to get on the other side of the fence to see how a company actually operates, but in an exciting business like the internet.
How old were you at the time?
I was 35, I think.
Okay. Had a family?
I was, I've been married for like 3 years, and then my wife had our first child, she's a daughter. First child was on the way. So when she was born, we call her Ali Baby.
Well, that's an amazing roll of the dice. So as we know, 99% of all startups fail. So why and how was this the one? How did this go on to become such a, really one of, if not the biggest success in all of China, certainly at the time?
I think the title of this session is called Survival and Innovation. And in fact, there's a causal relationship. Those two are actually go hand in hand. I think from the very early days, we didn't have a lot of capital. So everything was about surviving the little amount of cash we had left in the bank. Because Jack taught everybody, as long as you live another day, you have an opportunity to create. So we had that instinct of, we got to survive, which helped us to overcome failures. A lot of startups fail. Some of their products iterate several times, they fail, and then they decide to fold the company and do something else. But Alibaba never did that. We kept going at it. And you might say necessity is the mother of invention. So out of the desire to survive and kind of, hang on to our last breath came a lot of innovation. And in fact, if you look at the history of Alibaba, we did everything. All of our high growth businesses were developed organically. We weren't successful with acquisitions, but we were kind of an organic development type of company. We had a B2B marketplace, and then we went into the consumer marketplace, that's Taobao. Then we decided that payment was important to enable transactions to happen online, so we developed Alipay organically. And then we developed the monetization engine organically, basically doing a search-based advertising system on a e-commerce marketplace. So you can imagine kind of a way of monetizing the marketplace via sort of search-based advertising like Google, interposed on a system like eBay. That was our invention. That was our idea. And today, Taobao is very profitable. That's still the case. So we grew our cloud computing business organically. So I think the idea is that as long as you can survive and hang on to your breath for just one more day, something good may happen.
All right, so you held your breath, and 15 years later, you take Alibaba public, largest IPO ever, raised $25 billion. Market cap of the company is over $230 billion. And now, 25 years since the founding, and now 10 years after the IPO, what's the most exciting thing on the horizon today for Alibaba and for you personally?
So every day I'm in the company, I feel excited. And that's because I get to work with young people that are smart, that are creative, that are innovative. So Alibaba does have this DNA of letting young people, letting our team to do a lot of the innovation. It's not a very top-down driven type of company. We like innovation from the bottom up. So today, what's quite exciting to us, obviously, the hot topic today is AI. And
so before you jump into that, one thing is that there's a great quote from you, and you've been popularizing that even more in this last 18 months since you've returned to be chairman of it. My job is to get out of people's way. Most chairmen don't think that way. Explain.
You know, I've been with the company for 26 years, so I didn't feel like I need to prove to anybody that I'm in control, I'm in charge. About 18 months ago, I was, in fact, prior to that, for about 2 or 3 years, I was slowly phasing out of the business. As one of the founders of the business, I thought, you know, the company was already very large and is going on its own path. And then 18 months ago, I came back into the chairmanship because I felt, a lot of people felt, including our board, that we needed to change the management team, and we put a fairly young CEO in place. So the CEO of our company is 12 years younger than I am. And they said, well, Joe, why don't you come back as chairman, not CEO, chairman. You know, because we need an old pair of hands, if not steady pair of hands. So the first thing, I walked into the board meeting. Our lawyer said, Joe, now you're the executive chairman of the company. I said, wait a minute. Don't give me the title executive. I'm the chairman of the company. I know I'm a full-time officer of the company, so I'm an executive. But my title should not be executive chairman. I don't agree with the British system where they have an executive chairman and the CEO. And the reason is, then who's in charge? Your employees are going to be confused. External parties are going to be confused. Who's really in charge running the business? In our company, I'm very clear. Our CEO runs the company, and I provide support to the CEO when it comes to allocating resources. I get involved in capital allocation decisions. I get involved in HR decisions. If we wanted to create a equity-based incentive plan, he will want to consult with me on stuff like that. It's important that as chairman of the company, you don't get into people's way. And a lot of the chairmen can't let go. And I don't think that's the right way to develop the next generation of leadership.
Okay, so let's go pivot over to, this sort of one of the biggest, most important and core businesses is cloud computing. And sort of differentiated maybe from Amazon is that you have been investing in and developing your own capabilities. Give us a state of where you are today. Where are you in Grok 3 and DeepSeek and all these different competing LLMs out there? Where does Alibaba fit in this? And what matters to you? Where do you think the value is?
Well, I think Elon has already said Grok 3 is going to be the best AI ever.
Forever.
So nobody, rest of eternity. So do I need to answer this question now? I think, in fact, I actually used the Grok because I'm on X, his Twitter app, and they provide an interface to Grok, which I use very often. I'm very impressed by the results. I also use a number of other apps, AI apps, including our own. The answer to your question, this AI race, who's better, whose AI is better, the answer yesterday is going to be different from the answer tomorrow. Right now, everybody is in a fairly tight race. The next model that's going to be launched is going to be better than some, but not others, and then somebody else will launch something that's better than yours. And we think that's what's going to happen. But what has you mentioned DeepSeek, and it's quite significant. And that's because they actually demonstrated that you can use some engineering innovation to drastically lower the cost of training and inference of large language models. And up to this point, people are massively investing into these frontier models. But here's the problem. If you think about training of frontier models as an endeavor to educate your kids, and you want to have the smartest kids, develop them so that they can acquire PhDs in not just one subject matter, but 15 subject matters, from maths to physics to biology to psychology, everything. You want to have the smartest kids. If that's the case, take that into today's AI race. There's maybe only 5 or 6 rich parents that can afford to have the smartest kids. But is that something that we're really interested in? It's probably not. You have to start to ask yourself, what is the purpose of, what is the goal of developing AI? Is this to have the smartest child so that they can win every single Nobel Prize? Or is it something different, like there's a lot of problems in the world that need to be solved. There's a lot of issues that we need to use AI to apply AI so that it can be useful and productive and make an economic impact. So I think people are going to start, when they look at the phenomenon of DeepSeek, people are going to start shift away from, all right, let's stop putting in hundreds of billions of dollars into compute infrastructure so that we can train the smartest PhD in everything that can win the Nobel Prize. Let's find out what are the actual problems in the world, and let's use AI to solve them. So a lot of people are going to start putting resources into applications. I think that's number one. Number two is DeepSeek has taught us the value of open source. If today your only purpose in life is to develop a closed source AI system that is the smartest PhD student in everything, the Nobel Prize winning kid, I personally think the value of that endeavor is approaching zero.
So that's a pretty amazing and pretty bold vision for AI, quite different from sort of what these big 5 very wealthy parents are pursuing. Right now.
But because what about the rest of us,
yeah.
Right? If there are only 5 people that can afford to have the smartest kids, that's not a world that you want to live in, right? So I think there's ways to develop smart kids as well, not using all this massive compute resources. If people can focus, number one, focus on applications, and number two, leveraging on the open source community, leverage on the ecosystem of open source. The thing about the open source community is people share, right? Everything that you contribute to the open source is now in the ecosystem that other people can learn from. And so I think in the future, probably smaller models will proliferate. I'll give you an example. We're in the e-commerce business. So if I want to develop a very smart shopping assistant to help to recommend things to our shoppers, do I really need a large language model that has 1 trillion parameters? Probably not. Probably not. Just like if you hire a shopping assistant in your store, do you need to have them acquire a physics PhD to help you pick out the best dress in the store? Probably not. So I think now with open source, a lot of companies can participate because they can take the open source code and deploy it on their infrastructure, whether it's their own data center or on their laptop computer. Companies from big or small, entrepreneurs, can now all develop together, develop AI together, and contribute to the power of AI.
So this is actually a very unique and distinctive point of view about AI and the development and, most importantly, the deployment. It's a much more democratized point of view about it. And I believe you're going to publish a paper today.
I am. I'm writing an op-ed today, which later on will be published online in the South China Morning Post newspaper. It's the top English language newspaper based in Hong Kong, which will talk a little bit about this. But remember, though, I didn't use the word inclusive or democratized because I think these are overused concepts. I just think that with open source, with smaller models, you can open it up, and a lot of developer and entrepreneurs and smaller companies can contribute toward the development of AI. And I think that's a good thing. That's a good thing for innovation. It's not just limited to 5 or 6 companies that have, these 5 or 6 companies are investing $60 to $80 billion a year in compute infrastructure. It's crazy.
Certainly interesting to follow it all. So world is changing very quickly. So your stock is up 38% this year, 8% yesterday. I think a lot driven by this announcement of a new partnership with Apple in China. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, Apple is an example of edge computing, right? Because their smartphone is a device that is not a massive computer sitting in some data center. So they need to have some small, intelligent AI in their phones. They're able to do it with other companies outside of China, but inside China, because of regulatory issues and things like that, they need to work with Chinese companies that develop AI. And I think that's going to be the case in the future. Wherever you do business, you may want to have a localized AI that power your devices. So Apple has been very selective. They talked to a number of companies in China, and in the end, they choose to do business with us. They want to use our AI to power their phones. And so we're very fortunate and feel extremely honored to be able to do business with a great company like Apple.
So one of the things I've gotten to know about Joe is that there are 2 Joe Tsais, much like Clark Kent and Superman. There's the mild-mannered gentleman that you see here on the stage, and then there's this ferocious competitor in the field of sports. So let me just quickly go through your lineup here. You own the Brooklyn Nets of the NBA, the New York Liberty of the WNBA, the San Diego Seals and Las Vegas Desert Dogs of the National Lacrosse League, and a stake in the Miami Dolphins of the NFL. And I understand that the roots of your interest in sports actually go back to when you were at an all-boys boarding school. And you said at the time, I was better than everyone else in math, but I didn't get respect that way. I got respect on the football field. So maybe you could connect the dots there of these 2 Joe Tsais.
Well, you think it's 2 Joes, but it's really just one guy who started as an athlete in life. I was fairly athletic. When my parents sent me to boarding school in the United States, I was in a new environment. I was a little bit shy and new culture. And, it's an all-boys boarding school, so the only way you could get respect from people is if you play sports. And I went after the hardest thing. I played football, not soccer. I played American football in high school. And so unlike a lot of the tech entrepreneurs, I was an athlete first, and then I became sort of a geek because I work in a tech company, spent a lot of time with engineers and scientists. So that was kind of the beginning. And so my passion for sports has always been there, but the opportunity to buy a professional sports team really came in a serendipitous way. And I really had no intention to, it wasn't like I grew up dreaming that I would own an NBA team. And the opportunity came along in 2017. Then I kind of studied the economics of the NBA and the major sports leagues, professional sports leagues, and got very intrigued. And decided to make the investment. And today I'm pretty happy because the value of that investment has gone up quite a bit.
So you said, quote, "Sport teaches not just discipline and hard work, but also how to fail. You lose, you must bounce back." So what are the lessons on the sports field that you apply to the work field, your day job?
Yeah. Well, it's the resiliency. Think about it. For those of you who have participated in team sports or individual sports like tennis and golf, you have to face failure pretty much every season. You're not going to win every single game during the season. So when you lose, they say, yeah, you bounce back. But those who really have played, how do you bounce back? It's not to think about the next game. It's actually to think about tomorrow's practice. How am I going to improve tomorrow in practice so that I can get a little bit better and prepare for the next opponent? So it's really incremental, step by step, and focusing on the details. And I think if you apply that principle to work, to business, it's the same thing. You just have to be very, very focused on every single operating aspect if you're running the business. And I've said, as a chairman, I don't run the business, but I expect that our management team are focused on things like that.
So with the assistance of the Alibaba search, I found a handful of quotes of yours, and they're actually pretty fantastic quotes, and I think, very inspiring, and I think very informative. And so I'm just going to read the quote, and maybe you could talk just a little bit about each one of these in terms of what they mean to you. So the most important job of a leader is to give people your sight of the future.
Well, it's clear because the team needs a direction. I think there's nothing more frustrating than people that work for you who really don't know how you're thinking about the future and don't really have a direction. Did I say that's the most important thing?
Yeah.
I have something that's even more important.
Oh, yeah.
I think as a leader, you need to have the ability to work with people, recruit people that are smarter than you are. And I think that's absolutely important because you're not going to last forever. And at some point, the company's progress is going to outgrow your capabilities. So you have to bring in people that are better and smarter so that the company can continue to improve.
One of my favorites, quote, "Humility is very important for a leader. You have to be able to admit mistakes." Not easy for any leader to do, but...
Well, if you can't even admit your mistakes, then it's going to be hard to imagine that you're willing to correct your mistakes. Imagine that. I mean, we're in a business where a slight veering away from doing the right thing can take you on a trajectory that's taking you to disaster. I think the good leaders always are willing to self-reflect and say, all right, I was wrong, we need to change course. And make the determination. It's hard. It's very, very difficult to tell people that you were wrong, but we have to do it.
So this one actually goes a little bit, maybe ties into some of the things that Elon was talking about. You said a common problem of big companies is they get set in their organizational structure and fit the direction of the company into the structure, and it actually should be the reverse. And I think that's a little bit of what Elon was talking about.
Yeah. I mean, his whole comment on the government inefficiency Government comes with a huge structure, and structure defines direction. That shouldn't be the case. You always have to define what the direction is, and then you set the company's organizational structure and the people to put the right people in the right place to achieve the purpose.
So you and I have known each other for some time. There is a quote of yours, which you've now come to see actually doesn't apply to me. 99% of people need 7 to 8 hours of sleep. If you think you're in the 1%, you're fooling yourself.
This is the one thing I really admire about Jeffrey. He sleeps 4 hours a day, or 3, or something like that. I can't. I have to have 7 to 8 hours pretty much within a 24-hour span. Because of jet lag and everything, I travel a lot. I can't sleep through the whole time, but I need to take a nap. But you are unique. And I did say that a lot of people think that they're in that 1%, but they're not. But knowing Jeffrey, knowing him for all these years, he's truly in that 1%. So
and I'm
congratulations.
I'm actually very grateful to the Beatles. They wrote a song for me. It's called 8 Days a Week. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.